Hello, and welcome back to Ask a News Worker. Hope everyone enjoyed the last video. It has 0 views as of right now, but hopefully that'll change. These are early days. We'll see what happens. Again, I encourage everyone watching to reach out to ask any questions you might have. That's the whole point of the channel, Ask a News Worker. So please, if you have anything you're curious about, write in the comments, send an email. I'd be very curious to hear from you. For this video, we're going to get into a very essential question. What is news? What is news? The news is all around us. We watch news channels, we read newspapers or news websites, we read social media which contains news. What is news? What do we mean when we say news? What do we consider news? What are we talking about when we refer to news? What is news? Well, I would say, I'll venture out and try to give a definition. I would say news is messages, at the very least. The news business is a vast messaging system made up of many different organisms, many different organs and outlets, I guess you could say, media outlets. It's a big messaging system with many messages moving through it at all times. That's one way to look at it. What makes the news you get through a news channel or a media outlet online or a newspaper, what makes that different from something you hear from a friend or something you hear from a family member or something you hear from a stranger on the street? Well, a lot of people would say, well, the news channels, the news business, newspapers, media outlets, those are more trustworthy, they're more professional. The news you get through those channels is vetted, it's proofed, it has a certain authenticity that maybe hearing something through your friend or family member or a random stranger might not. That's true to a certain degree. However, there are situations where you might hear something from a friend, a family member, or even a total stranger in a bar somewhere that does turn out to be true, but isn't in the news anywhere. No news outlets are talking about it, but you hear about it through a friend, you hear about it through a family member, random person, and it turns out to be true. You either confirm it to be true through your own personal experience or your own life, or some other revelation happens, like perhaps the news itself starts to pick it up, the news business. So I think we have to distinguish between the news business and what you hear in your private life every day. There's rumors, there's hearsay, I've heard a term called scuttlebutt. I still don't quite know what scuttlebutt is. There's many different ways in which to communicate, in which to share information, some of them informal and some of them formal. So news itself, again, can be a very complex concept. It can be informal, it can be formal once again. It can appear through official channels, unofficial channels. How do we know what's legitimate? How do we know what to trust? How do we know what to disregard, dismiss? That is very difficult, and we will get more into the details of that in this channel and further videos, future videos as time goes on. But for the purpose of this video, and I mean, watching the channel's videos in order isn't per se necessary, but I think it would be helpful for the purposes of this channel and the purposes of the viewers. I want everyone to think about what news is and where it comes from. I'm a news worker, once again, as the channel indicates. I work in the news business. I deal in messages. I'm getting information, messages, reports from other people that I proof and edit and send off to someone else. That in many cases I publish directly to the public, and the public reads them and then gets that information. Where did I get that information from? Where did the people I got the information from get their information from? How far down the chain does it go? Where does information originate? How does a fact even come to be a fact? How are facts established? I mean, these are the big philosophical questions that I am trying to address in this channel to try to shed some light on. And it's a process of exploration for me too. I am not going to pretend like I have the answers to everything or that I can fully address every single topic or question that might come up. But Again, a big part of this channel, a big part of what I'm trying to get at here is to get people thinking about what news is and how they get it, where it comes from, what it's made of, how it's established. When CNN is one example, or CBC in Canada, or the BBC in the UK, we'll stick with the Anglosphere for now. When they go to air or when they go to publish a piece of news, a news item, what is that based on? Where does that come from? In many cases, it comes from a news conference, comes from a press conference where a politician, for example, will call a press conference and will make a number of statements. The news worker, such as myself or someone else, will record the statements, will either transcribe them for print purposes or record the audio or video for audio and video purposes and distribute that around the world. So in some cases, the news originates in a press conference. In fact, the very purpose of a press conference is to distribute messages, to promote messages around the world, to get a specific message out there. Is everything said at a press conference true? No. Is everything said at a press conference accurate? No. Is everything said at a press conference essential? No. A lot of essential information, unfortunately, does not emerge from a press conference because it's a tightly controlled event. And there will be a separate video on that. But that's one example of where news can come from a press conference. Sometimes it can come from a document. An organization, a group, or even an individual publishes something. The news gets wind of it, hears about it, finds the information compelling, finds it to be within the public interest, and then makes a report based on that information. So the source of the news is a document in that case, just like the source of the news in another case was a press conference. So every news item has some sort of backing, some sort of sourcing, as people within the business call it, and I'm sure non-news workers call it that too. Every item has to have a source. Every item has to begin somewhere, either a document, a press conference, a person, some sort of happening, some sort of event. And in some cases it's very clear. In other cases it's not. In other cases, one might say, where did this news come from? What is the source? How is this circulating? Why is this circulating? Why is this in the news? Why is this in my head? Where did it come from? Who put it into the news cycle? Who put it into the news stream, if you will? Why? There's a lot to delve into here. So this is sort of an intro video to get people thinking about what news is. What makes news different from a rumor? You hear a rumor, something might happen or something did happen. You don't know if it's true or not. You read a news item. You say, okay, this is probably legitimate because it's in the news. A major news outlet has gone with this, has published it. They wouldn't publish it unless it were 100% true or accurate, is the thinking of a lot of people. Unfortunately, sometimes inaccuracies do get published. False information does get published. The phenomenon of fake news is very politicized and complex. There's many layers to that. People use it as a weapon. They'll use it as a rhetorical tool. Oh, that's fake news. Sometimes something will be described as fake news because it actually is. And in some cases, it'll be described as fake news because the people want to discredit the news itself. They want it to be fake because it implicates them or harms them in some way, and they want to dismiss any potential harm. They want to reduce the legitimacy of the news in question. But unfortunately, sometimes false information will get disseminated even through major professional news institutions. Sometimes they're honest about it. Sometimes they'll say we made a mistake. We were under the impression that this was true and it was not. And in other cases, they won't at all. And they'll just keep moving. And that can lead to trust issues in the public. People wondering, why didn't they fess up to that? Why didn't they acknowledge the problem with that? Why are they pretending like they didn't make a mistake when they did, or when other people are saying they did, other trustworthy people? So again, the theme of trust will come up a lot. How do we know what to trust? Trust is actually used in the branding of a lot of news outlets. You can trust us. We're your trusted news source, news you can trust. Trust is a very common word in the marketing between news organizations and the public. How do you know who to trust? Do you trust a person on the street who told you something? Do you trust major news organizations? How do you tell who's right? Sometimes the guy on the street might be ahead of the curve, might know something that the news itself doesn't even know yet, the news workers don't know, or sometimes he could be full of it, full of nonsense, just spreading rumors for no reason, or because maybe they have mental issues. Or, sometimes the major news organizations can be at fault because maybe they got a bad source, they got bad material, and they have the power to amplify incorrect information, misleading material, more so than the guy on the street. So there's all these different layers and dynamics. So what is news? News at its very essence is just messages. The news business, the news media is just a messaging system. At its core, it's just a system that delivers and spreads messages. The messages are varying in nature. Some are positive, some are negative. Most of them are negative, let's be honest. A lot of them are. The vast majority are negative or sad or concerning. But ultimately, the news, in terms of the news business, is just a messaging system, really not too different from the messaging system that might exist amongst friends, family, or even within a small town. It's just much more formalized and made into a business. Is it gossip? That might be insulting to the people who work in the news business, but I understand what people mean if they say, oh, the news is just a sort of formalized gossip system. I would say it's more than that, but I can understand what people mean. It is a messaging system at the very least. It is a system of message distribution at the very least. I would say that is what news is. But again, there's a lot more to talk about. There's a lot more to the conversation, and I will get into more of that in future videos. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, please write them below or please send me an email. I would love to hear from you, and we will continue this journey of thinking about the news, what it is, how it works, how it's created, how it's distributed, why, what are the motivations, what are the dynamics. We're going to get into all of it right here on Ask a News Worker. Thank you once again for watching.